He spent nearly 2 decades serving his country, but the moment 2 officers saw him in uniform outside a diner, they didn't see a veteran. They saw a suspect. What happened next was caught on camera and changed everything. Thursday morning was already warm when Isaac Merrin stepped out of Delano High School in Spartanburg, South Carolina. His dark blue dress uniform hugged his frame like it was tailored yesterday. Medals shined against his chest, polished just that morning. He didn't wear it often anymore, but when he did, he carried it like a second skin. He'd just finished speaking to a packed gymnasium. Students, staff, even a few parents. His topic wasn't flashy. It wasn't about combat stories or the movies people imagine when they hear Army vet. No, Isaac talked about structure, about discipline, about how waking up with a purpose, even after the service, could mean the difference between spiraling and rebuilding. He made a few of them laugh, a few more nod along. A girl in the front row, quiet, hoodie over her head, kept her eyes on him the entire time. Afterward, she came up, shook his hand without saying a word, and left. That alone made the whole morning worth it. Isaac slid his car key into the ignition, but didn't start it right away. His stomach reminded him he hadn't eaten since dawn. There was a spot just up the road, Mason's Diner. Nothing fancy, but the coffee was decent, and the owner still played old Otis Redding tracks on low volume. Isaac pulled into the lot and parked next to a rusted-out Ford pickup. He was halfway through texting his wife to let her know he'd be home soon when the scent of grilled bacon hit him. He stepped out, still in uniform, boots clicking against the concrete, and walked toward the front door. A few folks were gathered out front, leaning against the wall, sipping sweet tea and joking about the Gamecocks. One of them, a man in his 50s with a faded ball cap, gave him a respectful nod as he walked by. Inside, the place was nearly full. College students, 2 older couples, a construction crew on break. Isaac waited near the door. A waitress named Jody, white apron, hair in a loose bun, smiled when she spotted him. "Hey, Sergeant Merrin, you want your usual?" she asked, grabbing a mug. He chuckled. "Just coffee, Jody. To go." Got a long drive. As he stood near the front, checking his messages and sipping the hot drink she brought him, Isaac caught his reflection in the window. The uniform still looked right on him. There was something about standing tall in it that felt grounding. That's when he noticed the police cruiser pulling in. Then a second one, both parked diagonally, fast, like something urgent was happening. The engines cut, but the doors stayed shut for a moment too long. Isaac didn't think much of it at first. Maybe someone had called in a theft or a fight. Maybe someone passed out in the restroom. That happened once, years ago, during a breakfast rush. But then, 2 officers got out, both white. One tall and heavy-set, with red cheeks and mirrored sunglasses. The other wiry, young, with a hand already near his belt. They locked eyes with Isaac almost instantly. They weren't scanning the area. They weren't talking to the hostess. They were coming straight for him. The first one, the older officer, approached like he already knew something Isaac didn't. "You mind stepping outside, sir?" he asked. Isaac blinked, surprised. "Is there a problem?" "We got a report about someone loitering outside the school earlier, matching your description. I just spoke at that school." Isaac kept his voice calm. "You can ask Principal Norwood. I was invited." "We'll clear it up outside," the younger cop said. "Let's go." A few heads inside the diner turned. Jody froze behind the counter, lips parting but no sound coming out. Isaac glanced around. He could feel it happening already, that subtle shift in the room when something's off, but no one wants to be the first to speak. He took a breath, stepped outside. But the moment his boots hit the sidewalk, everything started tilting in a direction he couldn't control. The sun hit hard against the concrete as Isaac stepped outside, coffee still warm in his hand. He kept his shoulders square, his chin level. The years taught him how to keep his cool in worse situations. But this didn't feel like war. It felt like being tested. Officer Brent Halden, the heavy-set one, moved with a kind of performative confidence, like every step was meant to show control. His partner, Colin Rusk, had a twitchy kind of energy, like he was running a race in his head, and Isaac was already losing. Isaac kept his hands visible, fingers open at his sides. "You mind telling me what this is about?" Holden looked him up and down. "You said you were at the high school?" "Correct." "You have ID on you?" "In my inside jacket pocket." Isaac said, "I'm going to reach for it, slowly." "Don't move yet," Rusk snapped. Isaac froze. A couple of customers had followed them outside and were now standing awkwardly near the door. One of them, a black woman in scrubs, had her phone up. Not recording yet, but ready. "I'm Army, retired," Isaac said carefully. "I gave a talk at the school. Principal Norwood invited me. You can confirm that." "We're just following up on a call," Holden replied, voice tight. "We were told someone in uniform was hanging around the back parking lot. We get these tips and have to check them out." "And that someone matches my description?" "Tall, black, military uniform. Alone." Rusk emphasized the last word like it meant something more. Isaac let out a slow breath. "That describes me. Yeah, but I wasn't in any parking lot. I walked straight out the front, shook hands with half the staff, and drove here. Still need to see ID," Holden said. Isaac slowly reached inside his coat, pulled out his wallet, and handed over his driver's license and retired military ID. Holden looked it over without a word. Rusk moved around behind Isaac, circling like a hawk. "That's a real uniform?" Rusk asked. "I served 19 years, 4 deployments. You can check the credentials." "Where'd you get the medals?" Isaac turned slightly. "Are you asking if I earned them?" Holden narrowed his eyes. "You're not being cooperative." Isaac blinked. "I handed you my ID and explained why I was at the school. What exactly do you think I'm not cooperating with?" That's when Rusk reached forward. "Hands on your head." "What?" "I said, hands on your head." "I didn't do anything wrong," Isaac said, louder now. "You're overstepping." "I gave you a lawful order," Rusk barked. "Now do it, or we'll place you under arrest." People around them started to murmur. The woman in scrubs hit record. An older man by the ice machine stepped closer, phone in hand. A cook in an apron stood frozen near the dumpster. Isaac didn't move. "I'm not resisting, but you're escalating something that doesn't need it." Holden took a step forward, jaw clenched. "We don't need a scene. Then stop making one," Isaac said. That's when it happened. Rusk grabbed his arm. Hard. Isaac instinctively stepped back. Holden moved in fast, hand pressing against Isaac's back, forcing him forward. The coffee cup hit the ground, shattering near his boots. They pushed him onto the hood of the cruiser. One zip tie came out, then another. "You're hurting me," Isaac said through gritted teeth. "You match a description. You're being detained." Holden snapped. "For being a black man in uniform?" Isaac said, louder now. Someone in the background shouted, "He's a veteran! What the hell are y'all doing?" Jody, the waitress, stepped outside. "You guys serious? That's Sergeant Merrin. He eats here every week." Neither cop responded. The zip ties bit into Isaac's wrists as they cinched them too tight. More phones were up now, recording, capturing every second. The tension felt electric, like it might snap any second. No one moved, no one said a word, except Isaac. He took a breath, voice shaking slightly. "Watch." He tilted his head down and muttered a voice command into his smartwatch. "Call Aurelia." The tiny speaker chirped in acknowledgement. Rusk shoved him harder against the hood. "What did you just do?" "Called someone who actually knows me," Isaac said, not turning his head. But what he didn't know yet was that the person on the other end wasn't just someone who knew him. She was someone with reach. Inside the cruiser, Isaac's forehead pressed cold against the hood. His arms were yanked behind his back, wrists throbbing from how tight the zip ties had been pulled. The pain wasn't what bothered him. It was the humiliation, the disbelief. The smell of engine oil filled his nose. Nearby, his coffee pooled in a messy arc beneath the front tire. "You're detaining me for nothing," Isaac said through clenched teeth. "You didn't read me my rights. You didn't tell me what I've been accused of." "We don't need to charge you to detain you temporarily," Rusk said, eyes darting toward the growing crowd. "You're a person of interest." For what crime? Someone in the crowd yelled. Let him go! A man shouted. You're making a mistake. Jody's voice cut through the noise. You'll need to call your captain, now. This is wrong, and everyone here knows it. Holden was starting to sweat, not from the heat, but from the pressure. He looked around, saw at least 6 phones pointed at him. One guy was already live streaming. A Facebook live chat was blowing up just out of view. Rusk wasn't fazed. His jaw was set. Isaac could see him pacing a little, shoulders tight, left hand resting on his taser like it was an extension of his body. Isaac's watch still glowed faintly. The call was connected. 15 miles across town, Aurelia Penn blinked down at her phone as it lit up on the boardroom table. She was in the middle of a quarterly update with city department heads. The mayor sat just 3 seats down, a half-empty paper cup of coffee in her hand. When she saw Isaac's name flash across the screen, she didn't hesitate. She picked up and stepped out. Isaac? Her voice was clear and direct. The only sound she got back was muffled yelling. Static. Then Isaac's voice. Strained. They're detaining me. Zip-tied. Mason's Diner. Spartanburg. Her heels were already clicking down the hallway before he finished. She'd known Isaac for 15 years. They'd served together once in Iraq. She'd trusted him then, and still did now. She knew he didn't scare easy, but something in his voice was off. She didn't wait. She speed-dialed the mayor's direct line and looped in Councilwoman Nadine Krill, who'd just met Isaac that morning after his school speech. Back in front of the diner, Rusk had turned to Holden. We should put him in the car. Too many people watching. Not yet. Holden muttered. Let's figure out who this guy is first. He already told us. Holden shook his head. Yeah, but that's what they all say. Isaac twisted slightly. That's what who says? Impersonators, phonies, guys in uniform pretending to be somebody. I gave you my damn ID, Isaac snapped. You can call the school, the city, the VA. Hell, check my license plates. It's all there. Watch your tone, Holden warned, stepping close. I will not. You're dragging my name through the dirt for sport. Someone in the crowd shouted, You just zip-tied a vet! You out of your minds? Isaac's phone buzzed in his jacket. Still zip-tied, he couldn't reach it, but the smartwatch picked it up. The speaker cracked. Isaac, I called the mayor. They're contacting dispatch now. Aurelia's voice. Holden flinched. Rusk looked at the watch like it had just bitten him. Isaac kept his face pressed to the hood. You messed with the wrong vet. A siren wailed in the distance, not from their own department, but a separate city cruiser approaching fast. In the crowd, someone called out, There's your supervisor. Hope y'all are ready. A black SUV bearing city plates pulled up seconds later. The door swung open before the engine even shut off. Out stepped a woman in a charcoal blazer. Deputy City Manager Eileen Greer. She walked straight toward Holden and Rusk, voice calm but cutting. Release him. Now. Rusk's mouth opened. Ma'am, with respect. I said now. Holden hesitated. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the zip ties. The second those bands came off, Isaac stepped back, shoulders still straight, dignity intact. He said nothing at first, just flexed his hands, trying to ease the burn. I want badge numbers, he said. Both of you, Greer nodded. You'll have them. And you'll have a formal apology. But right now, Sergeant Merrin, I need you to sit in my vehicle while we sort this. Isaac looked at her, then at the crowd. Cameras were still up. Someone started clapping. Another joined, and then a third. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just walked toward the SUV and slid into the back seat like it was part of his duty. But inside, the sting hadn't even started yet, because what came after the release would hit even harder. The inside of the SUV smelled like leather and lemon-scented wipes. Isaac sat in the back seat, rubbing the indentations on his wrists. The silence between him and Deputy City Manager Eileen Greer was heavy, but not tense. She was letting him breathe, letting the moment settle. He finally spoke. Did Aurelia call you? She did. I was already 3 blocks away when I got the call. The mayor's on the line with dispatch now. You made a hell of a phone call, Sergeant. Isaac nodded, jaw still clenched. They didn't even blink. Just went straight to tying me down like I was some threat. Greer looked at him through the rearview mirror. You were a threat to their assumptions. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. The air between them said everything. She handed him a bottle of water from the center console. You want to wait here while I speak to them, or come with me? He twisted the cap off. I'll wait. Greer stepped out and walked toward the officers, who now stood beside their cruiser, like kids caught cheating. She spoke to them in clipped, quiet tones, each word more like a hammer than a whisper. Rusk tried to defend himself, pointing back toward the diner. Holden kept staring at the ground. Inside the SUV, Isaac tapped his watch again. Aurelia, you still there? Her voice came through instantly. I'm here. Are you okay? They let me go. Greer showed up and pulled rank. Good. That's good. She paused. Do you want me to come there? Isaac took a long sip of water. Not yet. Just keep pressure on the city. Don't let them bury this. You know I won't. And she didn't. 15 minutes later, Aurelia was standing in the mayor's office, her phone on speaker, playing the recording of her conversation with Isaac. The mayor, Byron Kessler, a cautious but generally decent man in his early 60s, listened with his arms crossed. Next to him, Chief of Police Lamar Drayden looked visibly uncomfortable. She called it in through a voice command. Aurelia said, eyes locked on the chief. No hesitation. That's how fast they zip-tied him. You understand what I'm saying? Drayden shifted. I do. But I need to get a full report before I... No, you don't, Kessler cut in. You need to get those 2 officers off the street today. Put them on leave. Start your internal review. And while you're at it, issue a public statement, before the press beats us to it. Aurelia didn't flinch. You'll be beaten to it regardless. There's already video circulating. Someone tagged me on Instagram. Over 5,000 views in 20 minutes. Kessler sighed, his hand going to his temple. This town doesn't need this kind of firestorm. Aurelia leaned in. Then stop giving people a reason to light matches. Back at the diner, things were quieting down. Greer returned to the SUV. They've been removed from duty for now. Official reports being filed. You can head home, or we can have someone drive you if you'd prefer. Isaac looked out the window. The coffee was still there on the pavement. His uniform jacket was wrinkled, the left sleeve smudged with something dark. Grease, maybe. I'll drive, he said. I want to keep what's left of my routine. Greer nodded and handed him a card. I'm filing a witness statement on your behalf, but if anything needs to be added, call me. Isaac took the card. Thanks for showing up. She gave him a small, sharp smile. You made it impossible not to. As he stepped out and walked back toward his car, people around the diner nodded to him. Quiet nods. Respectful. Like they didn't quite know what to say, but knew silence wasn't right either. The woman in scrubs who'd recorded the video caught up to him before he reached the driver's door. I posted it, she said, holding up her phone. I blurred your name, but the story's out there. People are talking. He looked at her. Thank you. Seriously. She shook her head. No, thank you. For not backing down. He got in his car and sat for a second, fingers drumming against the wheel. He didn't feel safe. Not in uniform, not in public, not in a town where respect was a costume easily ripped off if you didn't look the part people expected. His phone vibrated again. This time it was a text from Aurelia. Mayor just authorized a press statement. Officers suspended. It's happening. He stared at the message for a moment, then started the engine. But no press statement was going to erase the image of his face on that cruiser hood, because going viral wasn't justice. It was just exposure. By the time Isaac turned onto his street, the internet had already made up its mind. The video, posted under the username @MoniqueInScrubs, had crossed 38,000 views. 10 minutes later, it was on Twitter, then TikTok, then a Reddit thread titled, This just happened today in Spartanburg. Black vet zip-tied in uniform for grabbing coffee. The comments came fast, like hail. This is why people don't trust cops. Man served 20 years and still gets treated like a criminal. This is disgusting. And from a veteran in Texas, every damn vet should be speaking out right now. This is personal. Someone even tracked down a photo from the high school's Facebook page. Isaac shaking hands with the principal just 45 minutes before the incident. That screenshot started making the rounds as proof. Proof that this man wasn't just innocent. He was respected, and they still brought him to the pavement. Inside Isaac's living room, sunlight filtered through the blinds, landing on a shelf lined with family photos and army memorabilia. He set his phone on the counter and stood still for a moment, letting his breath even out. He wasn't angry, not in that second, just tired. His wife, Delia, came down the hall, her eyes wide. "You okay?" "I'm all right," he said, almost automatically. "What happened? I just saw something online. Aurelia called, too." He pulled off his jacket, winced at the stiffness in his shoulders. "Some cops got twitchy. Thought I was pretending to be military. They zip-tied me outside Mason's." Delia stared at him for a beat. "You serious?" He didn't answer, just placed the jacket over a chair. "Jesus, Isaac," she muttered. "You didn't even do anything." "I know." He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees. His hands still carried faint red marks from the plastic restraints. "You want to talk about it?" she asked, kneeling in front of him. "Later." He looked over at the muted TV, where news tickers scrolled beneath talking heads. He turned the volume up. The local news station had already picked it up. An incident earlier today involving a retired Army veteran detained outside Mason's diner is gaining attention online. Video footage shows 2 Spartanburg police officers placing the man in zip ties despite protest from witnesses and the man's own identification. Isaac stared at the screen. The reporter was standing in the diner's parking lot. Yellow tape still hung between 2 cones. Behind her, you could almost see the dark stain where his coffee had spilled. Delia sat next to him, shaking her head. "How many times does this need to happen before people listen?" He didn't respond. His phone vibrated again. Another alert. The city had just posted a statement. "We are aware of the incident involving a retired veteran earlier this morning. The city of Spartanburg is committed to conducting a full and transparent investigation. At this time, the officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending review. We ask the public for patience as we gather all the facts." Isaac read it twice. Out loud, the words felt hollow. "They always say, 'pending review,' like it means something," he muttered. Delia crossed her arms. "You think they'll try to spin it?" "They'll try, but not this time. Too many cameras, too many witnesses." He looked back at his phone. New messages were pouring in. Aurelia. "CNN just reached out for a statement." Jody, the waitress. "We're all behind you. I'll go on record if needed." Councilwoman Krill. "Spoke to your friend Penn. Let's talk tomorrow about next steps." And then one from a number he didn't recognize. It read, "Sergeant Marin, my name is Dr. Miguel Arantes. I'm a professor of ethics and criminal justice at Furman University. Would you be willing to speak at our upcoming town hall on policing and public trust?" Isaac stared at the message. He hadn't even had time to process what happened. Now people wanted him to become the voice of it. Delia saw the look on his face. "You don't have to say yes." "I know," he said. But even as the words came out, part of him felt like he'd already agreed. The weight wasn't just his anymore, but what he didn't expect was how quickly this story would stop being his at all, how the internet would twist, amplify, and sometimes forget the human behind the headline. That night, Isaac didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated in slow, squeaky circles. Delia had drifted off hours earlier, her hand still resting on his forearm. But Isaac's mind wouldn't shut off. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the plastic zip ties clicking, felt the pressure of the cruiser's hood beneath his chest, heard the flat, suspicious tone in Holden's voice. His uniform was still draped over the chair in the corner. The smudge on the sleeve stood out in the dark like a bruise. Just after 3:00 a.m., he gave up trying to rest. He walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and opened his laptop. His inbox was overflowing. Veteran groups had emailed. Journalists from everywhere, Charlotte, San Diego, even Canada, wanted quotes. One reporter from The Intercept asked if he'd be willing to go on record about the trauma of being dehumanized in public. Another wanted to know how he felt about law enforcement targeting high-visibility black bodies. That's how she phrased it. He closed the tab. He wasn't ready to be anyone's headline. Not yet. By 7 a.m, a news van was parked 2 houses down. The driver waited behind the wheel, pretending not to look at the front door. Isaac didn't step outside. Instead, he called Aurelia. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, you up?" "I've been up. You okay?" "Not really." She was quiet for a beat. "What do you need?" "I don't know yet. I feel like I'm being asked to carry something I didn't choose." "That's because you are," she said. "But you don't have to carry it alone." "I know. Still feels like I'm standing under a spotlight and everyone's waiting to see if I blink." "You already did your part, Isaac. You stayed calm. You followed every instruction. You called for help. The rest isn't on you." He rubbed his eyes. "They're already digging into me. I saw a blog post claiming I was hostile toward police in a Facebook comment 2 years ago." Aurelia groaned. "They'll reach for anything. That's why you stay centered. Stay factual. Don't take the bait." Just then, a knock came at the front door. Delia, now up and tying her robe, peered out the window. "It's Krill," she said. Isaac opened the door. Councilwoman Nadine Krill stood on the porch in jeans and a campaign t-shirt. No camera crew, no assistants, just her and a reusable coffee cup. "I figured you'd need this," she said, holding it out. "Strong, no sugar." He stepped aside. "You came out early." "I was already heading to the municipal building. Thought I'd stop by first." She sat at the kitchen table while Isaac poured her some water. Delia quietly disappeared into the bedroom. Krill spoke first. "We're organizing a closed meeting this afternoon. Mayor, Chief Drayden, a few of us from the council. I want you there." "I'm not a politician." "No," she said. "You're someone who lived through what the rest of us are pretending only happens on the news. That means your voice carries weight. Not in a press conference, not in a tweet. In the room where policy gets shaped." Isaac leaned on the counter. "You think they'll listen?" "I think they won't have a choice." He exhaled through his nose. "People keep telling me to speak, but when I do, I just feel more exposed. You were exposed out there on that cruiser. Now you're in the position to make sure no one else has to be." That landed. He didn't respond, but his jaw tensed, the way it always did when he was trying not to show what he was feeling. Krill stood. "Meeting's at 2. I'll text you the location." She started to leave, then turned back. "And Isaac, don't wear the uniform. Wear yourself." He nodded once. That meant more than he could explain. Later that day, when he showed up at the small conference room inside the municipal building, he wore a plain, dark grey sweater, black slacks, and worn-in boots. No medals, no badges, just Isaac. As he stepped inside, every face turned toward him. Not out of suspicion this time, but anticipation. He didn't smile. He sat down, folded his hands, and waited to be heard. But what he didn't realize yet was how loud his silence had already become, and how many people were listening. The conference room inside Spartanburg's municipal building was nothing fancy. Off-white walls, a single flag in the corner, and a table that had seen too many budget meetings and not enough justice. Yet on that Tuesday afternoon, it felt like something important might actually happen there. Isaac sat between Councilwoman Krill and Aurelia. Across from him, Mayor Byron Kessler, Police Chief Lamar Drayden, City Attorney Celine Braddock, and 2 additional council members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Aurelia leaned in slightly. "You ready?" Isaac nodded. "Doesn't mean I know what I'm going to say. Then just speak truth. That's all this place needs." Mayor Kessler cleared his throat and began. "Let's start by thanking Sergeant Merrin for joining us. I know the past few days haven't been easy, and we appreciate your willingness to engage directly with us." Isaac looked at him. "You don't have to call me Sergeant. I'm not here in uniform." There was a pause. The kind that stiffens air. "All right," Kessler said. "Isaac, then," Drayden jumped in. "Let me say personally, what happened was unacceptable. Full stop. Our officers failed to de-escalate. They failed to observe. They acted on suspicion, not information. And they'll be held accountable." "You say that like they were an anomaly," Isaac replied. "But they're trained by your department. This isn't about 2 guys having a bad day. It's about the system that made them think I was a threat, before I even said a word. The room was dead quiet. Krill leaned forward. That's why we're here. Braddock, the city attorney, opened a folder. We're initiating an internal review of the department's use of force policies, especially in response to non-criminal detainments. There's also conversation about redirecting funds toward community response teams for non-violent reports. Isaac blinked. Let me ask you something, Celine. What if no one had been filming? What if I didn't have a smartwatch? What if Greer didn't show up? She looked up slowly. Then this meeting probably wouldn't be happening. And that right there is the problem. Aurelia spoke next, her voice measured but firm. The fact that the truth needs to go viral before anyone takes it seriously. That's a dangerous precedent. It doesn't fix the harm. It just manages the optics. Kessler looked tired. He rubbed his forehead, then turned to Drayden. Where's the IA report? Drayden slid a manila folder across the table. Preliminary findings show clear procedural overreach. Both officers are on unpaid suspension pending formal interviews. Their body cam footage confirms what the public already knows. Isaac raised an eyebrow. And what about the report they filed? Did it match the footage? Drayden hesitated. Parts of it did not, Braddock added. We're reviewing whether disciplinary action alone is sufficient or if it warrants termination. Krill didn't let that slide. They zip-tied a retired veteran in uniform, in public, while ignoring bystanders and visual proof of his identity. What more do you need? Silence again. Isaac finally said, I don't need their badges. I need this to stop happening. If that means new training, new leadership, whatever, do it. Because the next guy might not have a watch that makes phone calls. He stood. The chair scraped gently across the tile. I'm not here for an apology. I want to know this won't be swept under a press release. Braddock opened her mouth, but Isaac raised his hand. I've said what I needed to say. As he left the room, no one followed. He walked down the hall alone, shoulders squared but not stiff. Not angry, just solid. Like a man who's learned to carry weight without letting it change his shape. Outside, the sun was just beginning to drop behind the buildings. The light cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Krill caught up with him near the parking lot. You did good in there. I wasn't trying to. I know. That's why it worked. He gave a small nod. What happens next? We'll hold a town hall. No cameras, just people. Real conversations. Let me know when. Krill reached into her coat and pulled out a folded flyer. Also, Furman's panel on public trust is tomorrow night. They still want you. He looked down at the paper. The words felt heavier than they should. I'll think about it. But what he didn't know was that by the time he made up his mind, the town hall wouldn't just be about policing. It would become something much bigger. The morning of the town hall arrived with a strange stillness. No reporters at the end of the driveway, no new notifications lighting up Isaac's phone. Just the normal sounds, a neighbor's dog barking, the rumble of garbage trucks, and the hum of Delia's kettle warming water. Isaac sat at the kitchen table reading the email from the city's HR office. The subject line was cold. Disciplinary action. Officers Halden and Rusk. The message was straightforward. After reviewing body cam footage, witness statements, and official reports, both officers had been found in violation of department policy on multiple counts: unlawful detention, failure to de-escalate, and use of excessive restraint. They were no longer employed by the Spartanburg Police Department. No apology, no personal call, just a formal statement of termination copied to the mayor, the city attorney, and Aurelia. He leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Delia entered the kitchen with 2 mugs and set one in front of him. That the email? Yeah. Any part of it feel good? He shook his head slowly. Honestly? Not really. You thought it would? No, but maybe I hoped it might. She sat across from him. You know it's not justice. But it's something. Isaac nodded. It's not justice, it's damage control. Later that day, at the town hall inside the community center, folding chairs filled quickly. The audience was a mix, young and old, black and white, students, retirees, pastors, nurses, local business owners. Some wore t-shirts with Isaac's name on the back. Others came just to listen. A table was set up front for the panel. Krill was already there, along with Aurelia and Dr. Miguel Arantes, the ethics professor from Furman. One seat remained open. Isaac arrived 5 minutes before it started. No fanfare, no security escort. Just him, in a dark jacket and open-collar shirt. When he entered the room, a few people clapped. Some stood. He didn't acknowledge any of it, just made his way to the table and took his seat. Dr. Arantes leaned over. "Thank you for being here." Isaac nodded. "Thanks for the invite." The town hall began with a brief statement from Krill. She didn't sugarcoat it. She laid out exactly what happened, the officers' behavior, the city's response, and the changes already being drafted in policy and training. Then she handed the mic to Isaac. He stared at it for a second before picking it up. "I don't like public speaking," he said. That got a few quiet laughs. "I don't like being recorded. I don't like that my name is now connected to a moment I didn't choose. But I'll tell you this. When I was on that hood, with my arms behind my back, wearing the uniform I earned, I stopped thinking about myself. I thought about who might be next, who wouldn't have a smartwatch, or someone in city government who could take a call in real time." He paused. "I wasn't a suspect. I was a symbol. And that's the scariest part, because symbols don't talk, they don't feel. They get handled, displayed, dismissed." He scanned the crowd. "I served this country for almost 2 decades, and the moment 2 officers saw my skin before they saw my rank, everything I'd done vanished. That tells me it's not just about training, it's about mindset. It's about reflex. If your first instinct is to restrain instead of respect, then you don't need a badge. You need to sit in these chairs and listen." Silence. He passed the mic back. After that, the event shifted. People stood up, told their stories. A father talked about his teenage son being pulled over twice in the same week. A teacher described the fear in her students when squad cars passed by during recess. A retired sheriff stood and said, "We have to be better. All of us." Aurelia spoke too, about reform. Not just policies, but culture. "We don't need better press conferences," she said. "We need officers who don't flinch at the sight of a black man in a uniform." Afterward, people crowded Isaac. Some shook his hand, others hugged him. More than a few just stood nearby, not saying anything, but needing to be close. One man, probably in his 20s, whispered, "You gave people a voice tonight." Isaac didn't know how to respond. He just gave a nod and moved on. But as he walked out of that room, he finally realized something. This wasn't about going viral anymore. It was about visibility. And that kind of visibility stays with you. 3 days after the town hall, Isaac returned to Delano High School, not in uniform this time, and not to speak in the gym. This visit was different. Principal Chandra Bellamy, a tall woman with a warm voice and fierce eyes, greeted him just outside the main office. "They've been asking about you," she said, motioning toward the hallway full of lockers and teenage voices. "I figured they might," Isaac replied, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. "They saw the clips. A few of them even watched the town hall live stream. You're a legend now, you know." He gave a half smile. "That's a weird thing to be after the week I had." She motioned toward the library. "We're keeping it small. 15 students. Juniors and seniors. All asked to be here. You ready?" "No." She looked back, smiled. "Perfect. That means you'll speak from the right place." The library was quiet when he stepped in. A few students whispered when they saw him, and one girl mouthed something to a friend. Principal Bellamy introduced him again, but this time there was no applause. Just attention. The kind that made the room lean forward. Isaac stood in front of the reading nook, hands in his pockets. "I was here less than a week ago talking about structure, discipline, and purpose. All those things they tell you help make a man, help make a life. But I left this building, walked to a diner, and ended up face down on the hood of a police cruiser." He paused. "I didn't plan on becoming a story. I definitely didn't want to be a headline. I just wanted a cup of coffee." A boy in the front row raised his hand. Isaac nodded. "Do you think it would have been different if you weren't in uniform?" Isaac took a breath. "No. That's the part that messes with your head. because if I was in jeans and a hoodie, some people would have said, well, maybe he looked suspicious. But I was in my army blues. Medals, name tag, the whole thing. And it still happened. Another student asked, "Did you want them fired?" Isaac shook his head. At first, yeah, I was furious. But as the days went on, I realized it wasn't just about two guys with badges. It was about how fast suspicion becomes policy, how trust can be erased in 5 seconds flat. If firing them means something shifts, good. But that's just step one. A girl with braided hair spoke softly. Weren't you scared? Isaac looked at her. Yes, but not the kind of scared that makes you shake. The kind that makes you quiet. The kind that makes you think, if I move wrong, they'll decide I don't deserve to stand back up. Silence. He walked a few steps toward the table they were sitting around. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. You can do everything right. You can follow every rule. You can give your time, your years, your blood, and still, people will look at you and decide what you are before you even speak. A student near the back asked, "So what's the point then?" Isaac paused. The point is you keep speaking. You keep walking. You keep showing up. Because eventually someone in that room has to listen. And when they do, the story changes. After the session ended, several students stayed behind. One girl handed Isaac a folded letter. I wrote this the night after I saw the video. I just wanted to say thank you. He took it gently. Thank you. In the parking lot, Principal Bellamy caught up with him. You think you'll come back? Isaac looked up at the school building. If they'll have me. Any time. He got into his car, started the engine, and sat for a moment, the letter still unopened in his hand. The sun was out, brighter than it had been all week. And for once, he didn't feel like the whole world was watching him for the wrong reason. But just as he was about to pull away, his phone lit up again. A new email, a new request, and a new choice waiting to be made. The email was from a non-profit called Fieldstone Voices, a group focused on truth-telling through first-hand stories from veterans, activists, and everyday people. They wanted Isaac to speak on a national panel alongside a civil rights attorney, a retired police chief, and a young man who'd survived a wrongful arrest in Philadelphia. The topic? Trust, identity, and the weight of being seen. Isaac stared at the screen in his driveway, the hum of the engine barely noticeable. He didn't open the message. Not yet. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't sure if he had anything left to give. Later that evening, as the sky dimmed and the house settled into quiet, Delia found him on the porch, rocking slightly in the old cedar chair her father built when they first moved in. You thinking about the panel? She asked. He gave a slow nod. Feels like everything that happened is trying to push me into something bigger. Like I can't just go back to being a guy who picks up groceries and folds laundry on Sundays. She sat down beside him, arms folded across her chest. You can, if that's what you want. That's the problem. I'm not sure I want to anymore. They sat there in the soft dark, the porch light casting long shadows on the floorboards. I thought I was done fighting, Isaac said quietly. But maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just starting a different kind of service. Delia reached over, rested her hand on his. You've got something real to say, Isaac. And people trust you. That's rare. He nodded but stayed quiet. Eventually he opened the email. The words were direct, respectful. They'd seen the town hall. They believed his perspective mattered. Travel covered, no media pressure, just stories, exchanged honestly. He replied with a simple line. Yes, let me know the details. The event was set for the following month, in Indianapolis. In the weeks leading up to it, Isaac prepared, not with speeches or notes, but through conversations. He met with local youth groups, talked with officers from surrounding departments who reached out in good faith, and even visited a training session where rookies were learning about de-escalation. He didn't stand on a stage or preach. He sat with them, told them what it felt like, what he saw in their eyes that day outside Mason's diner, and what it told him about how deep bias runs when no one's paying attention. At the panel, when it was his turn to speak, Isaac walked slowly to the mic. Not as a victim, not as a symbol, as a man who'd spent nearly 2 decades in uniform only to learn that the country he served still carried blind spots that could nearly crush him. He shared the diner, the zip ties, the weight of 1,000 eyes filming while his dignity was pushed flat. But he also shared what came after, the girl who handed him the letter, the older veteran who drove from 2 counties over just to shake his hand, the officer in training who told him, "I thought I knew how to treat people, until I heard you." Isaac ended with this. Some people think being visible is a gift. They think it means you matter. But sometimes visibility just means you're easier to hurt. It means you're exposed. Every mistake, every movement, every misunderstanding put under a spotlight you didn't ask for. But I've learned that being seen, being truly seen, also means you have the power to reflect something back. Something honest. Something human. And if I can do that, even just once, then maybe that day outside the diner wasn't just about pain. Maybe it was about turning pain into purpose. The room was silent for a long time. Then someone stood. Then another. And another. But Isaac didn't speak again. He just sat down and listened to the applause wash over him. Not like praise, but like release. Back in Spartanburg, the mural outside Mason's diner went up a month later. A black man in uniform, standing tall, no name underneath, just 3 words in careful block letters. Let him be. Isaac visited it once, stood there quietly, his fingers grazing the edge of the paint. Then he turned, walked to his car, and headed home. Because visibility, after all, isn't about being watched. It's about being understood. If Isaac's story moved you, if it made you think twice about what justice should really look like, don't scroll away. Share this with someone. Start a conversation. Speak up. Because silence might feel safe, but it never makes change.